In the last 36 hours, war crimes and crimes against humanity have been committed in the Gaza Strip by Israeli Defense Forces. On top of this, the Israeli Defense Minister likening the residents, the 2.3 million civilians living in Gaza, to animals. I kid you not, animals, has ordered an entire blockade of the Gaza Strip, ensuring that no food, no electricity, no fuel reach the 2.3 million civilians living in this strip, including 50% of that population being under the age of 18. As it stands, and in the eyes of the whole of the Western world and the international community, Israel have bombed ambulance crews, with people inside who were already injured making their way to the hospital. Unfortunately, I cannot share this footage on TikTok because of its community guidelines. They have bombed an UNRWA school, which was housing hundreds upon hundreds of Palestinian families seeking shelter from Israeli high-precision drones and bombs. It's bombed a telecommunication station to cut off Gaza, which is already living in the dark because they have no electricity, to cut off Gaza from the rest of the world. It has even gone so far as to bomb Jabalia refugee camp, where 70% of those residents are Palestinian refugees who have already been kicked out of their homes from occupied Palestine so that illegal Israeli settlers can move in. Remember, people, this is not the first time that Gaza has been bombed. Operation Cast Lead. Gaza was bombed in 2008, seeing 1,400 Palestinian civilians slaughtered by Israeli weapons, including 300 children. In 2008, Israel used white phosphorus gas. I am not making this up. Have a look on Human Rights Watch. Have a look at their report. They were found to be using white phosphorus gas, which exploded over an UNRWA school where 1,600 Palestinian civilians were hiding out from Israeli drones. Nobody was brought to justice. These are crimes against humanity. This is a genocide happening in real time. Look at Amnesty International's report, 22 Days of Death and Destruction. Amnesty International are a human rights organisation. They are not in the business of propaganda. They will tell you the destruction caused by the fourth most powerful military in the world, which had taken place in Gaza in 2008. Hundreds upon hundreds of crimes against humanity had been recorded, including wiping out entire families. A family of 22 were bombed in the night whilst they were sleeping. The only surviving uncle was witness to this horrific attack. In 2014, Operation Protective Edge saw the total obliteration of 2,500 Palestinians, including 556 children. Israeli arms left 1,600 Palestinians disabled. A genocide is happening on our watch. A genocide is happening now. Why are the international community not getting involved? These are crimes against humanity. And to make matters worse, Israel have now cut off electricity to the 2.3 civilians living in Gaza so that their crimes cannot be, the footage of these crimes cannot be shown to people like us, people looking on social media, constantly trying to see which footage is coming out of the Gaza Strip. This is scary, people. This is a genocide happening. Remember, the Israeli Defense Minister has likened the Palestinian people living in Gaza to animals. And meanwhile, there is footage emerging of all of these crimes I am talking about, all over social media, all over reliable news outlets. I cannot share this footage on this platform, but I urge all of you to have a look at what is happening in the Gaza. I'm a child living in Gaza. I have probably been bombed several times in my entire life. I have probably lost family members. If I am an adult living in Gaza, I cannot gain employment. I cannot leave by land, sea or air. My water is rationed. My food is rationed. I cannot go back to my ancestral lands in occupied Palestine, where there are hundreds upon hundreds of illegal settlements housing almost 700,000 illegal settlers from Europe, from America, from the States. How come when the Western media talks about Israel having a right to defend themselves, why are the Palestinians not afforded the same right when Israel are literally committing war crimes and crimes against humanity against the Palestinian people on a daily basis? Ask yourself, why are the Palestinians not afforded the same right? Ask your local councillors, ask your local MPs and politicians, does Palestine have a right to defend itself? The Palestinians have a right in international law to defend themselves. They have a right to defend themselves against illegal checkpoints on their land, which have been there for decades. They have a right to defend themselves against a 26-foot-high apartheid wall, against the Geneva Convention, which snakes through Palestinian land, cutting off vital resources, olive trees, water, fertile land where Palestinians would normally grow their crops and rear their cattle, and annexing it to European Jewish people who have came to build a life for themselves on Palestinian land. I am not anti-Semitic for saying this. I have no problem with Jewish people. I have no problem with Muslims or Christians or any other religions. I have a problem with war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing and genocide. And every one of you listening to this video should have a problem with the same. Israel are literally in breach of 29 UN resolutions against the UN Charter. Why are all these governments and the Western media jumping on the bandwagon and glorifying Israel's right to defend itself? If Israel wanted peace, all they needed to do was agree to a solution where Palestinians, Christian and Muslim Palestinians, could have equal rights to the Jewish people living in historic Palestine. And instead, Israel choose to bomb residential areas. They choose to allow Palestinian women to give birth at illegal Israeli checkpoints. They choose to stop Muslim worshippers from worshipping at the third holiest mosque to the whole of Islam, Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. They choose to build settlements upon settlements on stolen Palestinian land, whilst dispossessing millions of Palestinian people in areas across the Middle East and across the world, waiting to return back to their land. UN Resolution 194 has allowed Palestinian refugees a legal right to return to Palestine for the last 75 years. And for the last 75 years, Israel have prohibited this, instead creating one of the biggest refugee crises in the world, because the descendants of these refugees also have a legal right to return. It is very important that you do your research. There are going to be many war crimes and crimes against humanity taking place in Gaza right now. They have already bombed residential areas. They have already bombed ambulances. They have already bombed mosques. They have already bombed schools. They have already bombed highly packed civilian areas. There is already 166 children who have died at Israeli high precision weapons as I speak. And the mainstream media are enabling this. They are enabling this genocide. So I ask you all, if you don't believe me, do your research. Go on, don't just get your news from Fox and the BBC and CNN. Remember, they support the Israeli agenda when it comes to annihilating the Palestinian people. Because in the minds of the mainstream media, the Palestinian people's lives are worth less than animals. Okay? Do your research. The footage coming out of Gaza is absolutely gut-wrenching. I am seeing footage of fathers pulling their babies, their toddlers, out of rubble. I am seeing footage of decapitated children on a hospital bed, and paramedics cannot help them because they do not have the resources, and these hospitals are a threat of being bombed. The footage I am seeing is like something from dystopia. I just ask you, do your research and look at what is happening to the Palestinian people. This attack did not just happen in the last 24 hours. The Palestinian people have been suffering a slow motion, incremental genocide and brutal occupation for the last 75 years, which has been becoming more and more sophisticated as technology has evolved. I could tell you so much more about the occupation, but for now, think about the 2.3 million residents of Gaza who are in fear for their lives, unable to leave because they are barricaded inside while bombs rain down on their houses and their families. Just think about that. In the dark, with no electricity. Think about the people of Gaza right now. As always, free Palestine.